In this video, I would like to talk briefly about two books. This book is uh, an extract from the Advaita Vedanta by Sankara, and it is the distinction between the observer and that which is observed. And the other is apparently a very famous book, Superior: The Return of Race Science. And I've just read the beginning because I don't read books completely. I just read the broad picture, then I plant the seed in my videos, and then I will experience what I know to be true within me inside the world. So I don't have the time to read all the books that I buy, which kind of stupid, but I just need to get the broad picture. And Sankara, which was an Indian mystique of the 9th or 8th century, but if he reached the absolute, he knew himself that he did not really exist. And it says that to have access to the absolute self, we must distinguish everything which is not the absolute self. The forms or the shapes, the body, the thoughts, all that which is observed is an object for the self. The self is therefore the ultimate observer, the eternal witness. And it also says we must distinguish between what observes and the phenomena which are observed, so that we might become conscious of our true identity. We identify indeed with our body and our thoughts. Our self is confounded or mistaken with our individuality, and we must remove one by one all these layers of appearance to recognize who we are really. What differentiates Indian mystical philosophy and Hegelian and European thought is that the Hindus want to remove themselves from existence and to join the absolute. The Europeans, they want the same thing, but they understand that they want a full experience of being. They want to go through all the layers, all the forms of consciousness. So that's what Hegel calls the phenomenology of spirit. It's the mind taking all the forms in the rational development of itself and coming back into itself. And this absolute self is that which I identified with Fichte, the German philosopher, what he calls das Ich, the self. So I am familiar with the European tradition and not the Indian tradition, but in essence they are identical. So about Superior: The Return of Race Science by Angela Saini, which, as far as I know, is Indian, but to predicate that a person of a certain origin should be true to the religion of his country of origin is sometimes true, sometimes dubious, but hopefully Hindu mysticism can help enlighten her. So the first thing that strikes the mind is that the book is titled Superior, and she begins by talking about Australian Aborigines, which are considered in mainstream racist thought to be the most inferior people. But wait a minute. She talks about the depth of their wisdom. And I will just quote a sentence from Hegel. Hegel says that spirit shall recognize itself everywhere. So true spirituality means to transcend the cultural, national, ethnic boundaries. So it's rational that there should be spirituality within Australian Aborigines ancestral culture. She says that scratching at the surface of systems of thought so deep that Western philosophical traditions can't contain them. I'm not sure that you know enough about Western tradition, because the pinnacle of Western tradition in philosophy is Hegel's system, and Hegel's system contains within itself all forms of thought, all forms of spirit, all forms of culture, because it is the thought of the totality, it is the whole thinking itself holy. So holy like holy scriptures, and holy like the whole. That's kind of a joke. In Australia, a rock isn't just a rock. That's quite ironic, because in the philosophy of nature by Hegel says that the rocks are screaming for spirit. They are crying out loud to become spiritualized. And Hegel shows that it is in the concept of nature to spiritualize itself. So in Hegel's philosophy of nature, the rocks are alive in a sense, because they are part of the living totality, which is the universe itself. The relationship that indigenous communities have with the land, even with inanimate natural objects, is practically boundless, everything and everyone intertwined. The difference between primitive wisdom and negative philosophy is that the primitive peoples, as we call them, they are in an immediate heavenly unity with all things. And the tradition in the West consists in having negated this primordial unity, and through this negation, by an act of cognitive understanding and progress, which is a very long and very painful path, to re-establish the original primordial conditions. And the philosophy of Hegel is the identity of identity and difference. But in order for identity to occur, there must be difference. And I understood when I had my God experience in 2018, the reason why some people that prejudiced, biased, arrogant European consider as not necessarily inferior, but different, and kind of disregards them, they are in a state of rest, because their spirituality is full, and they are smiling because they are laughing at the Europeans who are in a constant state of mental insanity, because the Europeans are seeking the same thing than it's not a thing, it's the absence of a thing, it's the boundless, the infinite. And the primitive or the wise people of the East, in their mystical insights, they are peaceful because they laugh, but not in a negative way. It's kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but they mock the Europeans for their madness, because the Europeans have to explore the world and space, and to travel the 7 seas, and to think things through in extremely complicated and complex manners, just to seek the infinite that they have already found, without having to shake and shape the whole world. So Europeans, what distinguishes them from all other people is that they make things so complicated, whereas it could be much simpler, but actually it could not. But yeah. So about the Australian Aborigines, they have shaped the landscape, built a spiritual relationship with it, with its unique flora and fauna. And Hegel explains that by practical activity, spirit or mind exteriorizes itself, becomes an object to itself, and by shaping nature, spirit gives itself a presence to himself. And spirit wants to recognize itself in the external world. And she says, in Aboriginal Australian thinking, the individual seems to melt away in the world around them. My purpose with this channel, and with my thinking life and my actual life, is to melt myself into the totality. This is the philosophy of Hegel, the philosophy of Nietzsche, and people think that Europeans are a purely negative people because they believe that from Plato to Hegel, it's just mindless abstractions and nonsensical babbling about obscure thought determinations, and that it's pointless, and that the other peoples have a more living spirituality, which is more concrete and more fluid or whatever, and that Europeans complicate things. But if you understand European philosophy, you understand that what Europeans have sought and searched and looked for in their philosophical endeavors is the state of the fullness of being that the primitive people have. I mean, when they have preserved their ancestral ways of life. But yeah, time, space, and object take on different dimensions, and none except those who have grown up immersed in this culture and place can quite understand it. The purpose of Hegel's philosophy is to understand all cultures, all types of spirituality. So yeah, we can't inhabit minds that aren't our own. The purpose of Hegel's philosophy is to inhabit the mind of others, because in essence they are the same, and that's spirituality and infinite. But yeah, otherwise it's an interesting, I've just read the beginning, but it's interesting because it gives the perspective of a non-European about the question of race, and it's well written, but there are many things with which I don't agree in this book, but it's not a matter of agreement or disagreement. It's just that this author is the mirror image of the re-emergence of racial science, and I won't talk about it in this video. I'll make another video probably, but I would like to express to whoever is watching this that the movement which begins by a racial awakening among Europeans and the rise and re-emergence of white racial consciousness. Those Europeans, or they think of themselves as white as first, it's only later that they think of themselves as European. They will discover that race is necessary to understand the modern world and to understand the world at large, but that it's an empty category, and they will be driven by the process of spirit and of world consciousness to the pagan circles, and in the pagan circles they will search for an animistic spiritualizing experience of nature, that which we find in the so-called primitive or primordial peoples of South America, the natives who have kept their traditions, or the Australian Aborigines, or the shamans in Siberia, or the northern Native Americans who have kept their traditions. So the Europeans, after having gone through the path of white consciousness, they will seek, some of them, this relationship with this boundless an infinite relationship with the environment and with nature, and they will reject the modern world and try to build their own private a paradise by building a permaculture farm, or an ecological self-sustaining farm, because they think that the modern world, which is in their view anti-white, is so corrupt that the only way to preserve oneself and one's family is to build yourself an ecological and spiritual relationship with nature. So the path of white racial consciousness, when lead to its conclusion, it leads to the same feeling of unity than the Australian Aborigines, which are mentioned in the book, have. So all roads lead to Hegel in the end. So yeah, I will stop there, and if I can, I will make another video tomorrow of more detailed comments of the book, but I just wanted to give my broad view.